Oh, just let me
That clock keeps ticking like a metronome, and my thoughts keep telling me to get me home, but my balls keep telling me to let me just let me
Welcome to part 1 of a 3-part review series of the Didun Design Royal Oak Chronograph. In this part, the first part, the initial impressions, I'll be talking about the watch after having owned it for less than 24 hours. This watch has been in my possession for 30 minutes. I have sized the bracelet and put it back in its box. So the impressions you'll be getting are very raw. I'll be able to talk through some of the initial specifications and wear the watch on the wrist and tell you what I think about it. In the second part, the design review section, I'll be talking about the watch in a lot more detail, going into its design history, some relative information that you might like to know, a bit more details about how the watch has been wearing and how I've enjoyed it. And in the third part, the closing thoughts section, I'll run through the watch and talk about it like I've been wearing it for over a month period, telling you the pros and cons of it overall and what I think about it. So with all that being said, let's get into the video. As always, these watches come standard with these cardboard boxes, which I think are great. They're very sturdy and they're excellent for storage. I was very impressed when I took this watch out of its case initially. There were a few things that caught my eye, and that was the dial. This is a much more attractive looking dial than the original version that I reviewed. If you haven't seen those reviews, I will link some of them in the description. I talk about the Royal Oak Automatic with the black face. It's a very simple watch. But in that section, I talk more about the case and the finishing of the bracelet and all of those details. But if you're not new here and you know that I've done all of that before, this is going to be your standard affair, me just talking about the watch, because I have technically owned this watch for over a year. I know what the finishing is like. The main reason why you buy these watches is for the bracelet and for the excellent finishing. But I'll be talking more about the movement and the face and the dial configuration, all of those details. So just looking at the dial, a white face that has a silver hue to it, has 3 sub-dials, with a 60-minute counter over here on the left. We have a 60-minute second track, and then we have your 24-hour time with a date complication in the corner. Very attractive. But what I liked about it is that this configuration does look very appealing. From a distance, it looks simple. Close up, you can start to see the little details of the tapisserie in the dial. But then you look at the color combination with the white, the thick black sub-dials, but then the black outline around the outside of the ring. It makes the watch's presence seem a bit smaller than what you'd expect. And just running through the dimensions, let's go through it. Specifications: the watch has a 41mm case diameter, 26mm lug to lug, 50mm from lug end to lug end, 13mm case height including the bezel and the case back. The case back is solid, which overall reduces the watch's presence in thickness, which is excellent. It has a screw-down case back with 8 flathead screws that secure it to the case. The watch is now running with a Seiko Mecha Quartz VK63, so a see-through case back is not necessary. The watch now also has 3 sets of screw-down pushers, which is excellent and a big advantage to the watch overall. But then the usual standard affair when you look at the bracelet is it's excellently finished, it's well brushed, it's polished on the sides, brushed in the center, running all the way through. If you've seen my original Royal Oak reviews, you'll know that I love these bracelets, and this is one of the reasons why you buy these watches, is for the bracelet. Turning over to the clasp, it's your standard milled out clasp that's been done very accurately. You can see the closure is excellent, and you secure them nice and tight. Double deployant trigger that you push, opening up both sides. Overall, it's a superb watch. The case and the finishing, all of those details are always excellent, and you never need to be surprised when you buy one of these watches, because you know that the case and the bracelet are always going to be done well. Just the finishing overall is excellent, as you would expect. Brushed surfaces, polished surfaces, chamfered edges, everything secured. Also notice that there is a little grommet in the center between the bezel and the case, like you would expect to see. That just supposedly helps with the watch's water resistance, even though you'd never take this into the water. Looking at the crowns in greater detail, you can see all of them have been recessed into the case. They are all screw-down crowns, and they look excellent. I'm so impressed. I love the way that this has been finished. The idea that these crowns are sitting so comfortably inside the case. So you just grip the edges and you unscrew them. And what I'll do is I'll start the chronograph movement for you. So let's watch that big hand in the center. And we're away. Now, unwinding the crown for setting the time and the date. As you can see, the data clock at the 4, in between the 4 and the 5 position. It's very easy. Once again, it's a screw down crown. So if we have a listen, springs free of the case. It is under spring tension, which is excellent. And setting the date, you'll put it out to the first position, which I'll do now for you. Very subtle adjustment. And I've noticed that the gearing for the date setting is very smooth, and it's so easy to cycle through the date. I mean, if I just flick, you can get through it so fast when it comes to setting the date, which is excellent. Not that you'd ever need it, and I think this plays to the watch's advantage. Because it's a mecha quartz movement, you don't have to worry about setting the time and the date, so it's pretty cool. The idea that it is a screw down crown makes a big difference, and I'm not going to set the time, because if I hack the movement, then it stops the chronograph function. That's just plain and simple, and look how legible these subdials are. This is one thing I've taken away from this experience, is that you can read the subdials so accurately from any distance away. So I'm just going to let this watch continue cycling through and talk about it a little bit more. Bringing up the watch for closer inspection, you can see the layout on the dial, all those little details. We look at the subdials, we can see that they have this matte satin finish to them. They refract the light very nicely. And around each subdial you can see that there is a stainless steel ring, which is also very attractive. The logo has been set well. We look around at the minute track that is surrounding the dial, and it looks excellent. And the legibility is really something. Every numeral has been set into the case, including the 3, 6, and 9 position. You can see the numerals are smaller, all highly polished. The date windows frame perfectly. And as you watch that subdial for the minute track, you can see it's going very well. And like I said in the Parnas Panda Daytona review, this model of movement, this VK63 movement, doesn't jump the hands in between like you would expect to see on a mechanical watch. The hand flows like you would expect to see on a minute hand, which is quite fascinating. It's a small piece of trivia I never realized. But the light hits it very well. And once again, like I said, from a distance it looks so simple, but when you bring it up close you get to see all these little details. Excellent. I will do a luminova and a proper night test with the watch over a few weeks, and I'll let you know what that's all about. But what I'm going to say is that the symmetry is excellent. The date window doesn't get in the way, it doesn't obscure my view. The fact that every numeral has been set, everything's balanced, it's legible, it's extremely legible. I mean, you can see the time so well in this position as it is. I'm very impressed. Let's get this watch on the wrist. Sitting on my 7-inch wrist, you can see that the watch fits comfortably, but there is one issue, and that issue is the way the end links conform to the wrist. So what I plan to do is to do a little bit of modifying to the case to see if I can get these end links to fit a little bit better on the underside. But overall, I just love the presence. I love the legibility of the dial. I think that is its biggest strong point. The fact that you can see every subdial, even from this distance away, just proves how legible it is as a chronograph, especially. I think it's important to have a legible chronograph, and a lot of companies have forgotten the importance of a legible chronograph nowadays. The weight feels very similar to the automatic movement, but it's not unbearable. You can still feel the weight, but it's not something that will hinder you in your daily process. I think it's an excellent size. Going down to the bracelet, I apologize for the lack of light, because the UK once again is overcast, so very difficult to get a good impression of what the bracelet looks like in light, but in some of my other videos you'll see it. You can see the clasp closes excellently and sits in the middle of my wrist. Looks superb. Let's bring you back in and reset the chronograph. So unscrewing the crowns, very easy, very smooth. I like the idea that they do screw in, and if I just bring it up close, you can see the threading on the inside. They look great. So you hit, it's got a very nice feeling, and I didn't say this in the Parnas Panda review, but when I say it has a nice feeling, I'm saying that it might not make the loudest noise, as you can hear. It doesn't make a loud noise, but the tactility you feel between your thumb and the mechanism is very secure. It gives you like a force feedback, which is nice. And then resetting, watch the hands as they reset to 0. Also watch the subdial. Resets perfectly. It looks great. Very impressed. So far, the initial impressions have been very good. I've owned the watch for just over an hour and plan to wear it a lot more before the design review. If you may or may not know, I sold the original Royal Oak for this one. The black dial automatic movement, to me, was a bit of a hindrance. The automatic movement wasn't as accurate as I would have liked. The black dial I found quite boring. The overall presence of the watch was quite thick because of the glass case back. And this watch so far seems to remedy all the things I didn't like about it. It has a very interesting dial layout that is appealing. It's very attractive, it's very legible, but it's not juxtaposed. You know, there's no irregular balance issues with the dial. We look at the size, the visual presence seems to be reduced because you have a white dial with a black ring around the outside, and these subdials sort of taper down the overall size of the watch. The case thickness is thinner because of the solid case back. And just overall, being a VK63 Maker Quartz movement, it's going to be so accurate, you know, within 10 seconds a year or somewhere along those lines. You don't have to worry about setting it. And another thing that I had, the issue that I had with the automatic watch was that I never wore a Royal Oak as much as I thought I would. So this watch, if I'm not interested in wearing it, I can put it away and not have to worry about setting it, not have to worry about the time jumping forward or changing. So that's excellent. So far, this ticks all the boxes for what I didn't enjoy about the last model. And of course, if you've been following my channel long enough, you know that these two watches will be going head to head very soon. And that's going to be exciting. So to all my new subscribers, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now.